Dr. Usman Chohan, who is a political economist, joins us online. Usman, thank you very much to have joined us. I wish you could have been in the studios, but nevertheless, it's good to have you on board. Usman, FATF, a lot has been said. A lot has been done by the government. How optimistic are you of Pakistan coming out of the grey list tonight?
Thank you for inviting me. I also wish I could be with you in person. I believe that the probability of us leaving this gray list nonsense that has continued for so long is very high, and I'm very proud of the achievements that Pakistan has made, the progress it's made in the last 4 years. It's a multi-stakeholder effort. It addresses so many, it's almost 30 points that they have accomplished, which has involved the bureaucracy, which has involved medium-sized organizations, which has involved the police, the FIA, and so many other institutions working together to make sure that we have a more transparent and efficient financial system. So I really do hope that this is the end of this journey and you can invite me for some other reason on your show.
You have also a book to give to me, autographed by yourself. Nevertheless, there has been a whole while campaign by the Indian side in order to kind of disrupt this plenary against Pakistan, or not in Pakistan's favor. Do you feel India succeeded? Because of course we've had China on our side. We've also had the comments from the Pakistani side that laid down the bare facts and figures.
Absolutely. The purpose of this was to try to throw a dirty wrench at this point, because even the Indians are now assessing that the compliance of Pakistan in money laundering, terror financing, and all these other stipulations is very high. They felt that they might give it one last, what they call in the United States a Hail Mary, and try to sabotage it by asking for the prohibitions or sanctions against 2 individuals who are related to now moribund, as Ambassador Munir Akram has rightly said, moribund organizations. So it was a kind of silly attempt, in my opinion. And China put in the council said, no thanks, we just hold that thought. And so these sorts of things are just, it wouldn't really matter anyways, I believe. I think it's one of those antagonistic things that catches the news eye, but I don't think it would have succeeded anyways, because when the proof of burden is so much in favor of Pakistan having accomplished so much, I'd really like to see how India's system is doing in terms of money laundering and terrorist financing now. I think
speaking of the Indian system and how they deal with money laundering, we know, we've discussed that in the past as well. The open support of the TTP, of the BLA by India, doesn't just that aspect makes it the primary candidate to be put into the blacklist, leave alone the grey list? Why isn't the FATF moving in that direction?
Yes, precisely. You could pick any single one aspect of their entire
I just picked one.
And this one is a very good example of just their support for these sorts of organizations should be enough to put them on the blacklist, really, but a gray list would be a good start. I take your point. I should also indicate that there is a sort of shift in gravity in the FATF, because, it's a very political and politicized organization. There's a bit of shift in gravity because there's more and more open voices that the FATF now target its crossfires towards Russia. Ukrainians are arguing for this, other countries are arguing for this. So Pakistan is an old story, and the sort of antagonism that was generated by India and its sympathizers over this time is an old story now, and it's kind of silly. So what I do anticipate is that there'll be much more fervent discussion about Russia, which, as you know, since 2022, early March or late February, has been disconnected from many parts of the global financial system, such as SWIFT. So if we want to look at where the FATF is going, I tell you that I think it's going towards Russia is more in their crosshairs now.
All right. Nevertheless, the Indian involvement or implication in continuing to put Pakistan in the grey list is no hidden fact. We've had open statements on that, and I'd like to quote Mr. Jaishankar here, who's the Indian Minister for External Affairs. He said that the Modi-led BJP government ensured, and I'm quoting what he said, that Pakistan remained on the FATF's grey list. In your point of view, if a person as important as Mr. Jaishankar says that on the record, why isn't the international community doing something as far as that is concerned? Why is there silence from the International Committee. I understand that there are other avenues that the International Committee is more preoccupied with, Russia for one, China for another. Nevertheless, this is something that needs to be taken into account.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. I also believe that the international financial system and the international governance system needs a very serious rehaul. Why? Because now we're entering, probably under my expectations, a recession by the beginning of 2023, if not earlier, and many countries will come under immense strain. At the same time that you have economies around the world struggling, you have oceans of money in these tax havens, these small islands, or even jurisdictions in the West that have all of this. Plus, India continues to not serve its people by having such large money laundering schemes and the financing of terrorists and so on. So I really do believe that the global system will be pushed to the brink by the stresses, and hopefully that is a critical juncture for us to make a better, fairer, more transparent international system. For us, you know, they put this pressure on us, and for 4 years we've been working to make our system better.
2018, and we are now end of 2022, Usman. But nevertheless, looking at what happened in the past and looking forward, do you feel the FATF needs to put into application rules and regulations that bar members that have been openly taking part in disqualifying or trying to disqualify other nations or put them on certain lists?
I think there's a very strong argument to do that. You can bar countries from this sort of thing for various other reasons, but the thing is, by the end, you'll end up with nobody sitting in there because the global system is a really big mess. But I understand the argument, and it's true that there is a very strong argument to point the crosshairs at India for what it has done in various terms. Yes.
All right, Usman, what are the stakes as far as Pakistan is concerned once it comes out of the grey list, and we all are hoping that it does?
A very positive outcome in terms of our economic thing. You see, one estimate that the government provided 2 years ago was that it was a $10 billion annual loss, and that's because it's harder to do transactions with entities in Pakistan. That cover is then lifted. It's also a bit of a offsetting thing because our sovereign rating was downgraded, as were many other countries because of the economic conditions. So at the time where you have downgrading and you have FATF, things get very bad. So at least remove the FATF's sword of Damocles and then work on the economy, and we can proceed forward. So what I'm saying is that things do get better because there are losses and high costs for other people to deal with entities here. Those costs now go away.
All right. Now that, I mean, inshallah, once Pakistan comes out of the grey list, what measures need to be taken by our country to become economically stable? We understand that Pakistan is going through a whole plethora of issues, whether it be economic in nature or whether it be humanitarian or climate induced.
You know, we can fight on many fronts, but I would like all of our leadership and our public to get on one page and put economics as a priority. Sometimes we get involved in the urgent and not the important. That's one thing. The second thing is we have to start to lobby along with other developing countries for the IMF to be very proactive in helping and not with the difficult stipulations at this time, as well as other international agencies. The last meeting of the IMF with all the central bankers going was a big disappointment. We also need to try to, because we're very vocal in the FATF, you know, we participate in this stuff. We also need to persuade these organizations to help make a more stable international system. That alone would help Pakistan as well as other developing countries a great deal. So what I'm saying is lobbying is a big part of it, and then us all coming on one page internally. These are probably the generalist contours of how we should approach it, with many little tactical things in each category.
Usman, also, do you feel we are going to have more international financial institutions coming to Pakistan once it's out of the grey list? And do you feel Pakistan needs to be maybe evolve its strategy as far as inviting all these international financial institutions and other NGOs or even multinationals to come? Do you feel that the procedure needs to be simplified in order to attract them?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think that the ease of doing business has always been a target we should aim for. We have made progress over the years, but at times things slow down in terms of getting better. And the rankings are competitive, so other countries are also working hard. So it's a race. And so a lot of effort has to be done on the ease of doing business. The other premise in your question is that we as a government should be focusing on this, but I actually believe that as the FATF's sword of Damocles is removed, private incentives become very strong for participating globally. So you don't need the government to do this. You actually need people and organizations to be more proactive. And they were held back by the FATF for 4 years now. Now that should, inshallah, get out of the way. And so I do want to see more private initiative, organizational initiative to interact with the world to generate commerce, exchange, and trade.
All right, Usman, finally, what are the issues that you feel presently the country is facing economically? I understand there are the issues that we can see on the forefront, but what are those issues that we need to tackle swiftly and maybe diplomatically in order for Pakistan to come out of this whole turmoil that it is engulfed in quicker than anticipated?
You know, it's not easy to get out of this turmoil for any country. You will see even developed countries get into a lot of trouble. You've heard about what's happening in the UK. But at the same time, our long-term targets, which require immediate action actually, is to generate export-driven growth, exporting better manpower as well. So basically you cut the current account deficit you suffer from. And the other one is the fiscal deficit, which means strengthening your taxation system as well as reconciling the size of government, particularly at the provincial level. And the third thing I would say is better governance at all tiers so that you create more value from the resources you have, including preparing for disasters, including such as pandemics and floods and all of these things that loom in the background. If we can do these three things, I think we're already on the right path, and I certainly see the capability of the country to do it, inshallah.
All right. There was a lot of talk, and of course, Pakistan complied with the anti-money laundering, the CFT regime. Do you feel that the laws concerning the anti-money laundering need to be made more stringent for no issue of the kind that we have encountered with the FATF to recur?
No, I think that the laws are very comprehensive and a lot of the work has done. You know, the challenge is always implementing laws. If you go back to the books of the laws that we have had, even in this domain, anti-money laundering, countering finance, even the laws of the 90s were very good. It's just that there were some loopholes that have been filled, important loopholes that have been filled. But it's always a question of implementation. And this takes us back to a philosophical question about our culture. Is it that when external agents put sanctions on us unfairly, because we're not the worst offender at anything in the world, but if they put these things unfairly on us, is that the impetus for us to fix our system? Or should we be thinking about our system in advance and then doing it? I mean, do you really want to have the stick over your head all the time, everybody's angry at you and you try to fix it, or would you rather fix it yourself in advance and then proceed so that the world admires you and follows your example? So I believe that a lot of this work that we are doing now, which is very laudable, could have been done 3 decades ago. So we have to make up for lost time, and the longer we wait to do these things, the bigger the challenge becomes. So as a new generation of leaders will come, their burden will be greater. This involves debt, this involves deficits, this involves the systems of financial markets, this involves participating in the digital economy, making the best use of our youth bulge. All of these things are best done in a timely manner. Time is of the essence in all these things. I really wish this FATF would not have been operable as a tool for countries such as India to deploy against us. You see, because we should have been strong enough in our financial system to begin with. So I really want us to go from a carrot-driven society rather than a stick-driven society.
Lesson learned in your point of view?
Absolutely,
for Pakistan,
absolutely,
for Pakistan.
Absolutely, because the stakes become so high that you just can't proceed. FATF is no trifling matter, nor is the IMF, and sometimes there are merits to the things that they say. It's just I wonder why they target us so much, and that's where the politics comes in. But the fact is that some of the things that the IMF says really do make sense. Some of the things the FATF, some, not all, make sense. So the fact is that having a well-functioning society governed by the people for the people, where capital and talent are paired together to maximize value for the public, that is something you should aim for anyways. And the fact is that we've needed a stick from time to time to get things done. It's very unfortunate because it puts you on the back foot, agitates the mind.
All right, technical question, Usman. The FATF says being on the grey list does not mean any extra due diligence measures by financial institutions, but the body does stress the need to consider associated risks when dealing with such countries. Then, I mean, if on the one hand the FATF said it has no such, extra due diligence for the country, then why are we so afraid of the grey list on the FATF? I'd like to understand that from an economist.
The fact is that whenever they come, inspectors for any reason from abroad, they can only get a glimpse of things. Usually they're very, very smart people, so just showing them a little bit gives them an idea of how things are, whether they're coming to inspect your financial system or anything else. So the fact is they can only sample what is here. That's why due diligence is important. If you have a well-functioning system, you can ask them to tour, look at whatever they want, ask any questions to anyone they want, and they can go away satisfied. So grey list is just their inference that things might be out there that they weren't able to sample, which leads to further doubts. Blacklist is obviously very different, where they know it's bad and they don't even need to hear your story. But grey list means that they're in a kind of discovery process. In a philosophical sense, it's a discovery process, and they still have doubts, so they keep you there. And they've kept you there for very long. My point is here that actually Pakistan made a lot of reform by the end of 2021. And so we didn't have to be kept on for so long, because the longer that they are dissatisfied, and they really do set high unfair standards sometimes, the fact that they're not satisfied actually leads to a long period where you are suffering losses. You see, if they had taken us off the list by 2021, we would be in an even stronger position today. True. I give you the example that in September 2021, our foreign exchange reserves were in excess of $20 billion with the state bank alone, plus $6 billion in the private banking system. And now they have shrunk to a number where we come into a position of weakness, as we discussed with lenders abroad, to cover up that deficit. So it's so surprising that from 20 billion to 6 billion, and I'm not saying that's our fault, it isn't, because there's a war, the full-blown war in Europe, there's an oil price issue, COVID hasn't really receded, and there's still very stringent policies on COVID around the world. So in these conditions, I couldn't possibly have imagined that things would get so bad around the world, but they will. And in fact, I tell you, unfortunately, 2023 will be a more difficult year for the rest of the world, not just for us. So you should brace yourself psychologically.
Bracing yourselves, do you feel the world needs to brace itself for FATF and organizations such as FATF? Pakistan has been embroiled with it on more than one occasion. Do you feel the FATF will continue to use its pressure tactics for other countries as well? I know 2 countries are on the blacklist as we speak, but do you feel in the future other countries might be in danger from the effects of FATF?
Yes, that's a very good question. Absolutely. As I alluded to earlier, I think that a lot of the discussion that's happening in this 2-day plenary involves targeting Russia. You see, because they're already out of the SWIFT system. A lot of the ways that they did financial exchange overseas previously was excluded. It was removed. It's not accessible to them anymore. There were exceptions for the gas sector for a while, but basically finance has been the avenue of Western countermeasures against Russia's aggression. And Russia has responded in a strong manner, and it has that energy reliance, and it is putting all its chips on the table. But finance was the domain where the counterattacks happened. If finance is that domain, then FATF always looms in the back of people's minds. Many important Ukrainians, for example, are writing at this time that FATF should be activated. And although I'm not sitting in the plenary, I imagine that that voice has been echoed among important people. And your question is the FATF going to be used against other countries? The first one that comes to mind is Russia, and later on it may be other countries for this reason. And I wouldn't have said that Russia is a huge money laundering target or terrorist target, but you can always reframe the objectives of FATF because it's been done 4 times. It started out against the war on drugs in the 90s and 80s, and then it became something to do with terrorism after 9/11, and then it became something against nuclear proliferation. And you know what, when you find briefcases of uranium in India, I think you could just slice them down right there just for the FATF's purpose. And now it's going into the digital economy and cryptocurrencies. So FATF's mandate will evolve, and so more and more pretext will be applied for the FATF to engage with countries that the powers that be don't like. So yes.
All right. So in this whole scenario of evolution of FATF policies. Let's hope that its policy for Pakistan changes and we come out of that grey list. Only a couple of hours remain, Usman, for me and you and the whole of the world and our countrymen to know what is happening as far as Pakistan and its relationship with the FATF is concerned. We remain optimistic. I'm sure you are as well, Usman, because we have complied with all the 34 points that were put forward by the FATF. It's only a matter of hours, so we cannot really, say concretely what is going to happen, but we remain optimistic, more optimistic than in the previous months. Thank you very much, Usman, to have joined us. That was Usman Chohan, Dr. Usman Chohan, political economist, talking to us and quite a detail about the FATF procedure and its relationship with Pakistan and where Pakistan stands today. We all hope that Pakistan will, inshallah ta'ala, come out of this grey list in a couple of hours' time. Just a couple of hours' time before we know that. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. Today is the last day of the week. We'll see you, inshallah, on Monday when new story segments are pertaining to us, you and Pakistan. As I always end my show, kindly help those who've been affected by the floods, 33 million plus people. Help in whichever capacity you can, whether it be by sending a text message to 9999 and sending 10 rupees through that text, or by giving more money or your clothes or your shoes or water or food to all those who are in need of that. Help them, because this is what our religion teaches us, this is what our society teaches us, and this is what is the most respectable way to do in order for our country to come out of this turmoil. Allah Hafiz and have a great weekend.